Before I say anything else, let me be clear. Some of us are not changing our hair, our voices, or our clothes because we hate being black. We're changing them because this world is not safe for us. So let me address the reality of survival first. There are many environments, such as our workplaces, our schools, our courtrooms, the banks, neighborhoods, towns, restaurants, you name it, that still remain dangerous for Black people. This is especially true if you are a dark skinned man or you are a Black male child, you're visibly queer or trans, or you just wear certain styles. So, to protect ourselves, many of us will straighten our hair, will change our accents, code switch, will hide tattoos, you'll dress a certain way, or you'll keep your natural hair kind of subtle. And these choices are not about rejecting our identity, but it's about safety and protection. So, for example, some bosses see locks and afros as unprofessional, right? Certain teachers see dark skinned kids with tight coiled hair, even if they don't even have the tight coiled hair, as trouble. And in some neighborhoods, while you're sitting in your cars or you're just visiting certain stores, some white people will see you as you're not supposed to be here. You are out of place. And then for police officers, they may look at your features and say, you are a criminal threat. So for some Black people who are fair skinned or white presenting, there's a kind of a shield to blend in for them. And they may be under the guise that they may receive better treatment because people don't readily or recognize them as being Black. So survival in a broken system means making choices to ensure our safety. And these adaptations are, they're just responses to real ongoing danger. It's not a sign of self-hate. That is real. So if you've ever switched your hair or your presentation just to protect your job, your safety, your kids, etc., that's survival. And survival says, I am doing this to navigate this system so that I can make it back home day in and day out. Pretty simple, pretty much what a lot of us are doing. Now, here's a difference. Now, while survival means that I'm adapting my appearance or my behavior to protect myself, there are deeper issues that arise from internalized negative stereotypes about our identity. These harmful beliefs that are the root of this particular thing that we're talking about. And it shapes how we see ourselves beyond external pressures. So here's an honest question. Who first called you nappy-headed or talked about how dark you were? Was it a white person, a dark person? Was it a stranger or someone you're familiar with? When you are alone looking in the mirror, do you truly love all of your Black features, or do you secretly wish that you could erase or alter them in some way? And this is self-reflection. And it's crucial because the difference between survival and self-hate lies in your beliefs. So if survival is about navigating a broken, violent system, then harmful beliefs can cause us to reject our own identity. So even when no one is watching, you're going to reject it. And the world might force you to play defense, but when the rules become your truth about yourself, then survival has become not necessarily survival, but self-hate. And that same self-hate doesn't just show up in how we style our hair or how we speak. It shows up in who we choose to love, who we choose to be seen with, our social circles, how we raise our kids, and how we just move about in society. So let's talk about DIY eugenics. So understanding eugenics, if you haven't watched episode 1 or 2, then I'll link it in the description so that you can go back and watch it. But eugenics is not a legitimate science, right? It's a deeply flawed racist ideology. And the main premise behind eugenics is that these scientists wanted to improve the human population by controlling first and foremost who could have kids. And then once you did, you're eliminating those traits that you consider undesirable. All right. So that approach, not only it devalues certain groups of people, but it also attempts to erase identities and features under this umbrella of scientific advancement. So DIY eugenics is when we start doing it at a quiet kind of customizable version in our own personal lives. So that sounds like, I don't want my kids to be too dark. I'm glad you don't have hair like your dad or your mom, or you got their hair. Or I'm only dating non-Black races because X, Y, Z, and you can fill in the blank. And that's not having a type, that's designing your life around anti-Blackness. That is self-hate with, I'm going to say, a gallon of generational trauma, and it's acting like it's personal preference. Now, hear me very clearly, because I know a lot of people like to twist certain parts of things that they hear. Dating across races is not a problem. Interracial love is not the villain. Mixed kids, multiracial kids are not the problem. You can fall in love with whoever you want to, non-black, black, whatever, or somebody just from a totally different culture. That love can be real, deep, and beautiful. That's not the issue. The issue is the why. So if you're in an interracial relationship and it has self-hate, that's something that the issue is. So what's the motive behind that? And only you can know that, because if you wouldn't be attracted to the person that you're with if they had darker skin or maybe kinkier hair textures or maybe full ethnic features, then that's the point. And if kids are an option and you would still want them, but you would say you want to be upgraded, you want to upgrade to lighter kids, looser curls, smaller nose, fairer skin, whatever the case may be, you're trying to get this more desirable bloodline. That's DIY eugenics. And listen, this applies to everybody: straight couples, queer couples, trans, non-binary folks. If this is your MO, then this is who I'm talking about. And people who never want kids still feel more valuable standing next to someone who looks less black. And the relationship might look cute on, say, your Instagram, your For You page, whatever the case may be. But if it's rooted in, I'm trying to get away from blackness, then your root is severely rotten. And it's going to show up in the fruit. And unfortunately, and the sad part is that a lot of this didn't start with us. It started in a house or social settings where we grew up in, and you're hearing these specific messages about who should and who shouldn't be brought home as your potential partners, maybe even as your friends. Phrases like, don't bring home anybody too black or too dark, marry white, marry for access and success because black folks this, black folks that. And they're making it clear that the lighter the skin is, that's the preferential thing for the family. And in some families, it even went as far as saying stay away from black folks, or framing it as the idea of marrying someone with darker skin as a way to dishonor their bloodline because they get shunned after that. And so these statements, they're not made in isolation. So they become this formed part of unspoken rules that and beliefs that sustain colorism and texturism. And the underlying message is that success, beauty, and even family honor is tied to proximity to whiteness. They may not tell you that, but that's what it is. And distance yourself from all else, especially blackness. And these ideas weren't often taught with the intention of protecting future generations, but that's just how it is. They ultimately carry these deeper implications of self-rejection and anti-blackness. That generational trauma, that's what I'm talking about. It's talking about, so-called protection built on self-hate, but it's still an unhealed wound. It's still self-hate. And that's why these conversations cut so deep, because it may be your grandmother, your mother, or whoever that's facilitating this type of anti-blackness, right? So it's not just about, your preferences. It's about being told directly or indirectly that our bloodline would be better if it's less dark, or if it's less dark like you, especially if you're the black or the darker of your family members, as they so-called the black sheep. But let's be real. Folks love to hide behind the word preference. I prefer lighter skin. I prefer broader shoulders. I prefer, curls. I just don't want to date X, Y, Z. I just think that a certain feature, these are more attractive. But when your whole type lines up perfectly with what white supremacy tells you is beautiful, just be honest. That's not preference. That's programming. And self-hate shows up just like that. Feeling embarrassed to date someone or stand next to someone who is too black or whose hair is too kinky. Don't come out the house looking like this. Don't come out the house looking like that. So refusing to be seen in public with your partner whose features maybe remind you of that part of yourself or your life that you were taught to hate. And needing, your love life to look a little closer to whiteness or mixed, so that you can feel upgraded, or you got that trophy at your side. Again, it's not who you love, it's why you love them. So whether your anti-blackness is making a choice for you, or, you're openly making a choice for it and you're working in partnership. And the dangers of self-hate and anti-blackness, we ain't even gonna talk about it on your kids. So that self-hate and that DIY eugenics that hits your kids, I mean, it hits it in a way that you probably don't even pick it up. So whether they're black, they're mixed, or they're anywhere in between, kids don't just hear your words, they absorb your patterns. And when a child grows up hearing something like, oh, your hair is too nappy, it's unmanageable, don't get too dark playing out in the sun, your hair is pelo milo, it's, too much, it's, I just can't do it, it's so unkept. You're lucky you got your dad's hair, or I'm lucky you got your sister's, whatever the case may be. Black women are loud, they're ratchet, they're ghetto. Black men are dogs, they're lazy, they're never around. They hear a very clear message, and that mindset doesn't stop in the mirror. It spreads into every part of their life. So who they think is beautiful, who they think is dating material, who they see as the ghetto and the ratchetness, so that they make sure they stay away from that person or that type. How they show up in their working environments, in their school environments, and how they show up in life. A black child grows up hearing all this stuff about their features being dragged, and it's like, can I turn into an adult who's healthy? Or is it that person who never feels attractive enough? Or they overwork themselves to prove that they belong? Or they date only people who look less black than them? Or they become the loudest person clowning other black folks just to distract from their own insecurities. That's how self-hate becomes a virus. One generation catches it and they pass it down. Keep passing it down. And it doesn't stop unless we stop it at the source. And then for the multi-ethnic kids or racial kids, too black for this, too black for that. You're too black for these people, but you're not black enough for these people. And when kids with one black parent and one non-black parent, or if they're just multiracial growing up and they're hearing stuff like, oh, you're pretty because XYZ, you're pretty because you got light eyes, you're pretty because your hair is this, you're pretty because of this, that, and the other. They get these confusing messages. I'm valuable because I'm less black. The black part of me is a side that people don't want. So I got to downplay that. And at the same time, they may hear, you're not black like us. You're too light to be black, or your hair doesn't look like us. You think you're better than us. So now this child is stuck in the middle. So the world that's too black versus the world that they're not white enough, and they're stuck somewhere in the middle, trying to navigate that. And that creates that sense of deep isolation, hurt, and they're trying to figure out, where am I supposed to be? They're isolated, and that's mental harm. Either way, the wound is still the same. Somebody has taught them that blackness is something to be managed, not something to be embraced. And these kids, again, they don't stay kids. They grow up. They carry that mindset. They carry it, whether it's in their dating, their friendships, their school, their work. This is the harm that they're taking with them, the baggage, unless they jettison it in time to where they're feeling healthy, where they don't have to overperform just to prove that they deserve to be in the room, or hanging around people that are toxic for them. Some of them will turn right around and put the next generation through the same thing, passing on that anti-blackness, that self-hate as a family heirloom, unfortunately. So let's just put it all on the table. Yes, the world is dangerous. Yes, some of us have to code switch or blend in just to make it home or to our next destination in one piece, the same way we left our house. And yes, sometimes we make choices out of survival and not self-hate. And we have also learned how to rank our own people. We have done that. We have used dating as preferences, which are actually tools. We have turned survival strategies into beauty standards. And we have built DIY eugenics into our personal lives and just say, oh, it's just my type. And both can be true. We are survivors of a racist system, and we sometimes help that system by how we think about ourselves and each other. And it's not a shame game. I'm not here to shame anybody. I'm here to point out that there's a difference between protecting yourself and participating in our own erasure. And that's the main thing. And so how do we unlearn these negative habits? How do we not push that and project it onto our next generation? And the first thing I would say is we can start with checking our motives. We can start with cleaning up our language, the way we talk to each other, the way we talk about ourselves to ourselves. What did you tell yourself in the mirror? And you don't have to post any affirmations or whatever, but at least be honest with yourself. Our Blackness is not a mistake. Our features are not curses. And so that's how we begin to heal and unlearn these harmful beliefs. We got to keep practicing it day in and day out. And if you don't, it becomes that baggage, that self-perception, that acceptance of this negativity that's being passed on, and passed on. So that is why we need to have this conversation. So these 3 series that I did, again, I'll post the links in the description. But I would just hope that we're mindful of when we use certain words, when we're talking about each other, that this language shapes our perception, and that we pay attention to the jokes, the phrases, so that we're not reinforcing these negative stereotypes. And as usual, I look forward to seeing your comments in the comment section, and make sure you subscribe and become a part of the Spice Bronz family. Until then, I'll see you on the high ground.